We all know the feeling of booking a surf trip for 1 week to wherever it might be in the world, only to get there and it be completely flat or the waves just be terrible for the entire time. Now, while this is not entirely avoidable, there are certain places around the world that all but guarantee you waves. You know, these are places that are super consistent. They face directly into wide open ocean, so almost whatever time of year you go there, you're almost guaranteed to get yourself waves. So first up, we've got Portugal. Now, Portugal faces directly into the wrath of the North Atlantic. You know, it's got west-facing coastline, which means any swell that's running, Portugal gets it. Now, particularly in winter, when those huge storms develop in the middle of the North Atlantic, it just sends a constant stream of swell over to Portugal. We all know places like Nazaré, Peniche, Ericeira, they've all got world-class waves, and during winter, this is when all those reefs and crazy beach breaks all light up. Now, obviously it gets stormy in Portugal as well. They get a lot of wind, a lot of rain. It does get pretty chilly as well, but because the coast, I guess, is kind of like jagged and there's lots of like little nooks and crannies in there that you can basically always find waves there. And then in summer, while the waves might be a little bit crappier, there's usually something to surf as well. Now, next up, we've got Hawaii. Now, Hawaii is famous for its North Shore. Obviously, during winter, they get some crazy swells there. And between October and April, this winter period basically means there's always waves on the North Shore. I spent a month there a few years ago and it wasn't flat once. And I think they basically just have continuous swell for that entire time. But then what a lot of people don't know is that during the opposite season, so the Northern Hemisphere summer, they actually get loads of waves on the south coast. So those same South Pacific swells that go up to Central America, Tahiti, they kind of spin off the bottom of New Zealand and just send all that swell up through the Pacific. So all those reef breaks in Honolulu get really good at that time, like Ala Moana Bowls, Diamond Head, all those kind of famous breaks. Next up, we've got West Oz. Now, West Oz is another ridiculously consistent surf destination. Like, seriously, I spent about 4 months there a few years ago, and that was in sort of autumn into summer, and there was not a single day where it was flat. I mean, there were some days I didn't surf because I was working or I was on shore or whatever, but if you really wanted to, you could go there and surf every single day of the year. That Margaret River region, from Cape Naturaliste to Cape Lewin in the south, those places there are just, there's just so many spots within that stretch of coast, it's insane. Obviously, you got the famous breaks like Main Break, the Box, North Point, loads of other waves like Gas Bay, all of those kind of places. Basically, you just have waves all the time. And yeah, there as well, you've got so much, I guess kind of like Portugal does, you have so much variety in the different types of breaks. You've got slabs, bommies, A-frame reef peaks, like reef passes, beaches. Next up, we've got South Africa. Now, like West Oz, it's susceptible to the roaring 40s. So you've got those roaring 40s storms spinning down the bottom of the world, just sending constant streams of swell up to South Africa. From Cape Town all the way around to Durban, there's so many waves within that stretch. I did a road trip there a few years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago now, and we did a trip from Durban and drove round to J Bay and then up to Cape Town. And yeah, there was waves the whole time. We went in October, so that's sort of springtime, and yeah, there was waves all the time. There's little fun beach breaks in Durban. J Bay was pretty fun as well, and then Cape Town just kind of had real fun beaches and was never really flat. So yeah, South Africa is just got like that, I guess, U-shaped coastline, so it can get swells from different directions, and it's just got a constant stream of swell from the furious South Atlantic. Next up, we've got Costa Rica. Now, Costa Rica is one of those places where it's like really easy to go surfing, and while it's not world class all the time, it just has waves all the time. Like, you can go to Costa Rica and almost guarantee to be surfing every single day. While you might not be getting tubed and like surfing pumping waves every day, you'll definitely be getting in the water. Central America in general is just so open to that South Pacific, you know, all faces kind of west-southwest. Anything that's happening in the Pacific, you know, between April and October, there's basically a constant stream of south just funneling up the coast. And then outside of that season, they kind of pick up a little bit of like the north swell as well. So places like Santa Teresa, Playa Hermosa, Dominical, those places are so swell exposed. There's just waves all the time. If anything, during that season, it's kind of gets too big quite often, so you've actually got to find places that have less swell. So sticking with our Central American theme, just to the north of Costa Rica, you've got Nicaragua. Now, Nicaragua, again, like Costa Rica, super consistent, just because it's so exposed to anything that's happening in the Pacific. Generally, April till October is when you get the biggest and best swells. I'm here in Nicaragua now, and it's basically just been head high every single day. I've been here for 3 weeks. And it hasn't really there's been a few days where it's been like a little bit bigger, like head and a half to double overhead, but it hasn't really dropped below head high the entire time, which is pretty sick. And I've kind of been getting spoiled, to be honest. Like, the waves haven't been like firing, but it's just been really fun, and I've just been taking like these head high offshore days for granted. Nicaragua is really unique as well, because that constant supply of swell is actually met by a constant offshore wind. Now, the reason for this is the Papagayo jet, which is basically a wind phenomenon that makes it constantly offshore here. Next up, we've got Chile. So Chile has got 4,000 kilometers of coastline, which again is open to that South Pacific. And between April and October, you get huge storms that send so much swell up to Chile, because it's such a long coast and so many little nooks and crannies and headlands where points can break on. There's beaches, there's kind of everything. You've just got swell like funneling up 4,000 kilometers of coastline. So there's obviously always going to be waves. You've got like swell magnets as well, the most famous one being Punta de Lobos. And then depending on the size of the swell, there's like so many other spots that you can surf in all the different sizes and swell directions and winds. So yeah, the key to getting waves in Chile is just getting on the road and driving. As well, they get waves in summer as well. I think actually those north swells that send waves to Hawaii, they eventually, a few days later, make it to Chile. So I'm not sure if that's actually correct, so please correct me if I'm wrong. So while April and October is its main source of swell, outside of that season, there's also a lot of waves as well. Like I was there for around 2 weeks in September. So what's that? September is their springtime, and yeah, if anything, there's almost too much swell most of the time. It never really dropped below head high. So next up, we've got Indonesia. Now, Indo is, one of the most famous and most sought after surf destinations on earth. It's just somewhere that it's probably the most consistent out of everywhere I've spoken about on this list. And it's also the most consistently world class, I found. Between April and October, that's the main swell season for Indo. It's also when you get the trade winds. So in Bali, like Uluwatu and that Bukit Peninsula is basically offshore all day. Indonesia is a huge country, and I think it's like the 4th or 5th biggest country in the world. And it's just got so much swell, so that whatever swell is happening in the Indian Ocean is just getting sent to Indo. It's got that huge coastline, and that coastline's got so many reefs and like bends in it, and just corners for where that swell can be bent into a left reef, a right reef, an A-frame peak, barrels, a lot of power, perfection. And yeah, it's just tropical, it's relatively cheap, super friendly people for the most part, and just so much coastline to explore. It's ridiculous. The really cool thing about Indo as well is that you can get waves all year. So while April till October is the dry season, and that's the main surfing season for Indo, there's actually plenty of wet season spots. So when that wind does blow from the west, there's loads of spots you can surf in the wet season. Even in Bali, you still get like offshore mornings, and then it'll be onshore in the afternoon, and you might get the evening glass off. While it might not be as good in the wet season, I'd say you can definitely head to Indo and basically go surfing every day, no matter what time of year you go there. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Any questions and comments, please fire away down below. For now, it's goodbye from me, and I'll see you in the next episode.